So we're standing here outside of the observation bunker at the Pointe du Hoc, which wasn't obviously one of the first bunkers that the Germans built here. They started constructing the site here at the Pointe du Hoc in the fall of 1942, November 1942. And the Germans obviously gave priority first to their open gun emplacements, dormitories, ammunition bunkers. Those were all built before the observation bunker was built, which was actually built in November 1943. So it was only a year after the Germans had started the construction of the Pointe du Hoc that they actually built the command post to the observation bunker here. Obviously, it was not just a bunker that was there for observation. It became the nerve center of the Pointe du Hoc. It was the command post as well. Initially, officers had been lodged in a farm near the access road that leads to the Pointe du Hoc there. But obviously, with the bombardments, more and more aerial bombardments from the Allies, they'll decide to set up that command post inside the observation bunker here. And in all, there were 9 German soldiers in here. The bunker was basically it was a standard bunker, what the Germans called a Regelbauten. It was like they had a catalog of bunkers and they could pick any type of bunker that they would use. So it was easier to build because they had these set models of bunkers. And this is the type that they used here at the Pointe du Hoc, a Regelbauten there. So we're going to have a look inside and see what it looked like inside. So we're standing here at the entrance of the observation bunker here at the Pointe du Hoc, and as we mentioned earlier on, it's a Regelbauten, so it's a standard type observation bunker, which means that the entrance to the bunker is always covered by 1 or several machine guns. Actually, here we have 3. We have the first one right here covering the entrance outside. There's another machine gun position inside as you walk down the steps, and there's another one on top, basically covering any approach towards the observation bunker in one of the Tobruks there, one of the concrete positions on top of the bunker. Most of the rooms are inside of the bunker, but there's one room outside. It's right here. This is actually the mess hall. The Germans had built this attachment to the standard observation bunker, and this is where they would have had their meals. Although there are pictures as well that exist of Germans on top of the bunker having a beer here in the spring of 1944. But obviously it needed some protection, so we've got this concrete rooms around protecting outside of the bunker where the Germans had their mess hall. So that's the only construction outside, which is sort of an added part of that observation bunker. Alright, so we just walked down the steps into the bunker here, standing at the entrance of the observation post here. And we mentioned it was a standard type bunker, a Regelbauten, not only in the way that it looked, but also in the way that it was built. And we can actually see that when we look around, and you can figure out how the Germans built this thing. What they would do is initially they would, they build the foundations, they would dig out the foundations, and then they would put, basically they put wooden framing. And the part of the wooden framing is still visible here. You can still see the wood. You can still see, you can still feel it. And then they would add the steel reinforcements, which are also still visible, because this was all reinforced concrete. So once the wooden framing was in place, once they had added the steel reinforcements, then they would start pouring the concrete, right? Now you can clearly see here that they did that in layers. We can clearly see, you can see the grain of the wood and the concrete, and you can see that they actually poured it in layers. They did it obviously to prevent air bubbles to form up in the concrete, to make sure it was very solid and thick concrete here. So this is how we can see that how they built it. Mainly built rather by Organization Todd. So a lot of French labor. There were some Russians and Italian POWs that worked here on the construction of the bunker as well. So basically, pretty standard the way it was built and the way it looked. Like all of these standard type bunkers, when you walk in and you come into the entrance, the first thing you'll see is a gas lock. These type bunkers, these Regelbauten, they're all designed in the 1930s. When the French and the Germans were building their fortifications along the Siegfried line and the Maginot line. And so in those days, there was still that a threat of gas, and it was still very present in the minds of the German and French commanders. So that's why we always had a gas lock here. In certain cases, there was even a shower, so that in case of a gas attack, if the Germans were contaminated, they could still get rid of any residue before they would go into the bunker there. So this is where that would have been at this command post, this observation bunker. And then you would have an armored door right behind us there to get into the bunker before you'll be able to get into the bunker. Now, although we pointed out how well the Germans had built this bunker by pouring the concreted layers and reinforcing it, there's a pretty thick steel door, armored door here, and you can still see the hinges here. Now, what's interesting is that we've got 4 hinges, and the reason for that is that the door actually came in 2 parts. You had the bottom part and the top part. And that was because the Germans thought that if there would be a heavy bombardment that would have a go at this concrete, if some of it would come down, would collapse, it would prevent the Germans from getting stuck inside, from being trapped inside. Because even if it blocked the door, you would still be able to open the top part of the door here. So as to prevent it from getting stuck. Although there was also an emergency exit that we'll see later on there. But that's sort of how the entrance to a bunker looks, with the gas lock, with the armored door, before you were actually able to go in. And obviously, right to our left here, the machine gun position covering the entrance there. They could actually close that. You'll probably seen that there's quite a lot of damage. That's actually grenade damage. So the Rangers attacked the bunker from 2 different sides and also from the rear. So that's some of that damage there. So the machine gunner could have fired, but he could have closed that little opening there to make sure that no one could throw any grenades, or they could actually lock themselves inside there. So that's what it looks here at the entrance. So we're going to have a look inside there. So here, as we walk in, we pass that armored door, or past the gas lock, and here we're in that other machine gun position that's also covering the entrance here. So maybe have a look from the inside, where it looks from the inside out. What's obviously interesting here, it's a small room, and you can imagine a German here with his MG42 machine gun. When you're firing that thing, obviously making a lot of noise, got the shell casings dropping, and would have been pretty impressive when you're firing a machine gun from inside here. Behind the German machine gunner, there would have been a power generator here. The Germans were really worried about self-sufficiency of this bunker and to make sure they had power. And with the regular aerial bombardments and with the actions of the resistance, they would regularly cut wires. They wanted to make sure they had a power generator in here, so they had power inside the bunker here. And so that power generator was here in this machine gun position. So this is the second machine gun position. And as we take the left here, there's another armored door. Not as sleek as the first one, but an armored door that would lead you to the barracks. This is the dormitory. As I said when we started, there's room in here for 9 German soldiers, and they could stay here for several days, and they actually slept in this room. They slept in bunk beds, and they were attached to a wall here. You can still see part of the structure that sustained the bunk beds against the wall. And so what would happen is, if the Germans wanted a little bit more room and play cards here at a table, a couple of chairs that they had, they would just leave the bunk beds against the wall, and once they would need them to go to sleep, they would lift the bunk bed, and the bunk beds were attached with metal chains to the ceiling here. You can still see the hooks where they would hook up their bunk beds there. So there was room for 9 guys in here. As we said, they had electricity, the power generator, so there were lights in here. They also had a stove. Obviously, as I said, they started the construction here in the fall of 1943, so they spent the rough winter of 1943-44 here. And so the stove, went out this way, and you would have had the stove right in the center here, so they could, warm up a little. They could cook or make some coffee, or so they had really basically everything they needed. Although obviously it's not as comfortable as you'd be in a farm nearby where the Germans initially had their dormitories. But obviously they thought of everything, so also a room for the German soldiers to sleep. And they had regular guard duties, obviously. There was continuously 1 or 2 German soldiers that would be on guard. But they would take shifts, and they would sleep here. Right? So that's what the barracks lot looked like. And then you go back out. We're going to go in this way into what probably is the largest room inside the command post and observation bunker here. This is what was the map room, or the operations room, basically. You would have had a large stable here with lots of maps, coordinates. This is obviously where the German officers would be. This is, where the nerve center was of the command post and observation bunker. All the coordinates, all the information would be centralized here, and then obviously order to be given to fire and adjust ranges and coordinates there. So this is really a very important part of the bunker here. But obviously, a lot of the information that the officers were getting, they were getting from the visual observation, and also from radio and telephone communications. And the radio and telephone communications were right over here. Two small rooms. Basically, over on this side, you had the telephone communications. Over on that side, radio. So basically, they could communicate via telephone. But again, the problem was there. The wires would sometimes get cut, and so they also had a radio room. Although apparently, a lot of the radio equipment that they used was to actually pick up radio messages and signals from out on the channel. If there would be an enemy approaching, they would be able to pick that up, or any messages, they could be able to pick that up over here. And so a lot of the information that they got, apart from the visual observation they had, would come in through here. This is also where they would communicate to the gunners over at the open gun emplacements or gun casements, and then initially, as we know on D-Day, to the gunners all the way behind the coastal road, because the guns had been moved behind the road there. Now, communication with the gunners over at the coastal road wasn't very good, as we know. When the Rangers, when Lynn Lamel and Jack Coon got to the guns, they didn't find any sentries and no gunners over at the guns there. And from accounts that we have from German soldiers that were here in the observation bunker, apparently through the radio communications that they had, those guys were drunk. They were drunk as hell. And so, they basically, what they got from them was like, the hell with it, we're out of here. And so they'd apparently been having a go at all the Calvados, and weren't up for a fight. So these guys must have been pretty upset, to put it that way, when they found out that there was nobody really over at the guns there that could fire them there. Again, it would be like 24-hour duty, so, you would have a separate room here over to this side, where there was room for the radio and telephone operator to get some sleep. Again, same idea as over in the other room there, the barracks room. You would have the bunk beds here, so they would be able to take shifts and get some sleep from time to time. But basically, there was a 24-hour job that they had here at the command post. And so this is where communications took place. We have the map rooms right next there, and so the only things left is obviously the visual observation that they had here in the observation post, and that's over back behind us. So we're going to have a look at probably what's the most impressive part of the bunker. And here you see another nice example of one of those armored doors. Like over at the barracks room over there, and all these armored doors, the double block on it. And actually, on D-Day, when the Rangers attacked the observation post, they attacked it from two different sides. There was a group that attacked it from the front. They actually threw several grenades through the observations. They threw 4 to 3, actually fell inside the bunker and exploded, and the Germans were momentarily silenced here. But they did receive, after that, more small arms fire from the Germans. So they brought in a bazooka, and they actually fired a bazooka rocket. The first rocket bounced off the top of the observation bunker, and the second one actually went right through the opening, and there was a lot of smoke. And apparently what happened then, the Germans basically, they locked themselves in, and they locked it, they barricaded it from the inside. So they locked all this, made sure that no Rangers could get in from the observation part of the bunker into the map room here, and we already seen the entrance over on that side. So they actually were locked in here. And from what we know, they stayed here until all they ran out of ammunition, firing their machine guns, and then opened the main entrance and came out with a white flag, and were taken prisoner. Accounts differ a little bit from the German side to the American side as to when exactly the Germans surrendered and how many Germans actually came out of the bunker. But we believe that there were 9 Germans in here. The Rangers claim that they captured 8 that actually were in this bunker, and there was one German soldier that was killed here. So that's what we believe had happened. Basically, the Germans in the end realized, well, we're stuck in here. We're gonna give it call it a day, and they surrendered here. So that's what basically what the last few hours they spent were probably in here, trying to figure out what they were going to do, and in the end they decided to surrender here. So, as we open the armored door again, we're going to go up these steps and have a look at this part, the final part of the observation post. And this obviously is probably one of the highlights for people who visit the observation bunker here. You know, the visual observation that we have here on the channel speaks to the imagination of a lot of our visitors, especially those who've seen The Longest Day and who remember Major Werner Pluskat seeing all those thousands of ships at the horizon. Now Major Werner Pluskat wasn't here, it was over at Omaha Beach, but they filmed it in a similar type observation bunker over in the British sector in a battery called Long-sur-Mer. But it's pretty much probably what the Germans saw here on the morning of the 6th. They looked through the opening here of the observation bunker here. Now, what's interesting is that you know, when they built this bunker in 1943, late 1943, a few things happened that actually demoralized the Germans who were here in 1944. The first thing that happened was several you know, Allied planes had already flown over the Pointe. There had been one attack by a fighter bomber that killed one of the Germans in the spring of 1943, actually the first German who was killed here. And in October 1943, they actually spotted out there in the channel three small dots, and they were actually small German, or rather small Allied patrol boats. And when they spotted them, you know, Germans sort of panicked a little bit, didn't really know how to react. The boats were small, they were very far out, and so basically the battery commander, Lieutenant Aveling, he decided not to fire at those small craft, small PT boats. And so a few days later, actually that cost him his job, because the major in command of the artillery regiment called up Aveling to tell him, why the hell didn't you fire at those ships there? He said, well, sir, they were too far out, and we're never going to hit them. And he said, well, you should have fired at them anyway. And so in the end, Aveling was fired. 2 days later, he was sent to the Eastern Front, disciplinary measure. Now, the men here adored Aveling. You know, he was very popular with the men, and so it affected their morale that Aveling, you know, left the battery. And that was the first thing that happened that sort of affected their morale. The second thing that happened was the fact that the soldiers that were arriving here, late 43, early 44, a lot of them were a lot older than the soldiers who were initially. Guys between 30 or 40, there were even a few guys that were in their 50s. And for the younger guys who stayed here, for them it was really tough to be there with these guys, because they were all family and they would talk about their families, and they had a lot of homesickness, and so obviously it affected everyone else in the battery, on the command post. So there was a morale factor there as well. And the next thing that affected morale was the winter of 43-44. It was a very cold winter here at the Pointe. Had a lot of winds. It can winds up to 90 kilometers per hour. And it was cold, and so obviously that also affected morale. And then as 44 started, you know, the first bombardments, real heavy bombardments in the spring of 1944.